All right, thank you, and apologies for the. I mean, we're not even late anymore for the schedule changes. Just to note, after I'm done here and Paulina is done, there will be a briefing by EU representatives at the stakeout. As we've been telling you quite a bit, the Secretary General has spent quite a bit of time on the phone in the past weeks with various leaders on concerning Ethiopia, and today he had a telephone conversation with the African Union High Representative for the Horn of Africa, former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, who had recently visited Addis Ababa and Mekelle, the capital of the state of Tigray, and he briefed the Secretary General on the recent efforts to resolve the Ethiopian conflict. The Secretary General said that he was delighted that after a year of the Secretary General said that he was delighted that after a year of armed conflict, which has affected millions of people across Ethiopia and the rest of the region, there is now a demonstrable effort to make peace. He reiterated his call on all parties to move rapidly towards cessation of hostilities as a critical step in the right direction for peacemaking. He also called once more on all sides in the conflict to support and facilitate local and international efforts to provide humanitarian aid to those in need. A quick update from Tonga following the eruption of Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcano. Our humanitarian colleagues report that about 84,000 people, that's more than 80% of the population, have been impacted by the disaster, with 3 confirmed fatalities to date. Injuries have also been reported, I think, as you heard from our colleague who's speaking to you from Fiji yesterday. The most pressing humanitarian needs are safe water, food, and non-food items. Of course, the reestablishment of communication services, including for international calls, and the internet is a priority. Sorry. All houses have apparently been destroyed on the island of Mango, and only 2 houses remain in Fonofuya Island, with extensive damage reported in Nomuka. Evacuation of people from these islands is underway. The cleanup of the international airport continues, and it is hoped that it will be operational on Thursday. As for the port, it is understood that ships will be able to dock. Relief efforts are scaling up, but it is difficult to reach remote areas to assess people's needs and provide assistance. There are also logistical challenges with shipping relief items internationally by air or by sea. In addition, the country, as you know, has very strict COVID protocols, and that must be followed. UNICEF is shipping water and other supplies through the Australian Royal Navy ship HMAS Adelaide, which is expected to leave for Tonga on the 21st. And of course, our 23 UN staff members who have been on the ground and who were living in Tonga are working with the government and local NGOs, and they're adapting to the changes in needs in the country. Mr. Grunberg, the special envoy for Yemen, is still in Riyadh today, where he continues his discussions with senior Yemeni and Saudi officials on options for de-escalation. Mr. Grunberg has been in close contact with all sides and urges them to exercise maximum restraint and respect their obligations under international law. He also called on the warring parties to engage constructively with his office to facilitate the immediate de-escalation of violence. The International Support Group for Lebanon, which includes the UN and major concerned member states as well as regional bodies, issued a statement today in which it took note of steps to reconvene the Council of Ministers, and it pressed for the resumption of its meetings as soon as possible. The support group urges expeditious and effective government decisions to initiate the direly needed reforms, as well as measures that would enable the agreement of the IMF to support a way out of the macroeconomic fiscal crises. The International Support Group further calls on the government of Lebanon to take necessary steps to ensure fair, transparent, inclusive elections in May of this year, as scheduled, including by enabling the Supervisory Commission of the elections to carry out its mandate. You heard from Tor Venislan, the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, who briefed the Security Council this morning and said that violence continues unabated across the occupied Palestinian territory, including settler violence, leading to numerous Palestinians and Israeli casualties and increasing the risk of broader escalation. Settlement activity, demolitions, and evictions also continue, feeding hopelessness and further undermining the diminishing prospects for negotiated solution. The special coordinator emphasized once more the urgent need for a coordinated approach to address political, economic, and institutional obstacles blocking the way for a meaningful peace process. Just one more note, and that is COVAX. In Rwanda, the billionth dose of COVAX-backed vaccines distributed globally landed over the weekend. This was part of a shipment of 1.1 million vaccines for the country, which is enabling authorities to continue rolling out the national vaccination campaign for 9.1 million people aged 12 and above. UNICEF brought in these supplies as the logistics and procurement of COVAX in the country. The UN team, led by the resident coordinator, Fode Njai, has been supporting health authorities to review, tailor, and contextualize delivery strategies through detailed national vaccination planning, costing, and implementation. WHO and UNICEF also continue to provide surge capacity to identify obstacles to the vaccination, including by boosting campaigns to combat misinformation and address hesitancy. A total of 17 million doses of vaccines have landed in the country through COVAX, with 43% of the population fully vaccinated. Haiti also received nearly 40,000 doses of a vaccine donated by the U.S., and we thank them. That was through COVAX, with the total number of vaccines there topping 800,000 through COVAX alone. Guyana, 29,000 single-dose vaccines, a donation from Spain. Thank you. Bringing a total number of COVAX vaccines to Guyana to 290,000. And for its part, the government of Peru purchased nearly 2 million doses of vaccines through COVAX, which landed yesterday. Tomorrow, at our briefing, we will have the UN resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for the Philippines, Gustavo Gonzalez. He will talk to you to bring you an update on the situation in the country following Typhoon Rai. As a programming note, there will be a press conference by the Secretary General of the United Nations at 1:30 p.m. on Friday. That follows his remarks that he will deliver to the General Assembly at 10 a.m. that day. We hope to distribute his remarks to you tomorrow and to have a background briefing with 2 senior UN officials tomorrow to go through the remarks. Speaking of member states, we want to thank 5 member states, and that is Germany, Hungary, Iceland, Netherlands, and Switzerland. They have paid up in quite a big chunk of money, I might add. 14 of them. Edith Lederer.
Thank you, Steph. 2 questions. First, as you said, the Secretary General welcomed this demonstrable effort toward peace in Ethiopia. Can you give us some more details on what this effort is and what he sees as the next steps?
Well, I think with Ethiopia, we're going to take it one step at a time. We have been, as you know, very supportive of the efforts of Mr. Obasanjo, Mr. Kenyatta as well, and we've been working hand in glove with the African Union. Also, our humanitarian officials have been making calls. We're all moving in the same direction, which is really to first and foremost, see an end to the violence, lift the humanitarian blockade. And I think the fact that Mr. Obasanjo had traveled recently to both Addis and Mekelle was a good sign.
But what was it that Mr. Obasanjo said that gave the Secretary General this feeling of optimism?
I think given the fact that have had an ebb and flow on this situation, I will leave it at what the Secretary General said.
And my second question was on Tonga. You said that 84,000 people, 80% of the population, have been affected. Can you expand a little on how they've been affected?
Well, they've been affected through loss of houses, loss of communication. What we understand is the issue with the water. Water is really the biggest life-saving issue. water sources have been polluted, water systems are down. From what we understand, what I'm told, that most Tongans rely on rainwater now until the time they can actually rely on underground sources again. So we need the issue is really the lack of communications, which hampers our ability to assess. But it's been, when a disaster like that hits a country which is already fragile, it can have devastating consequences. And it's really, we don't really have the full numbers on the loss of life, but it really is just impacting the everyday life infrastructure. James.
A couple of follow-ups. On Ethiopia, does the Secretary General believe that soon there could be face-to-face talks with the leaders of both sides? And what is the UN's role on the ground going forward with this maybe beginning of a peace process?
Okay. We're not in a situation, I think, where we'd feel comfortable giving a timeline. Again, given the length of this conflict and what we've seen in the past. The UN's role is there to support the African Union, support the Ethiopian parties, both in terms of the contacts we have at the political level, and especially on the humanitarian end.
And two quick follow-ups on the Middle East meeting today. I'm always somewhat reluctant to pass the words, but it was very interesting that on settlements and expulsions, Tor Wennesland used the word concern. Why is he not condemning? Why isn't he using the word condemnation? Why is the UN not condemning the activities of Israel here? And the second point was Norway had wanted to put new attention on this crisis, and I believe the Secretary General wants that. Mr. Wennesland said there was the possibility of an irreversible, dangerous collapse and widespread instability. Norway called a ministerial meeting. The only people that turned up and sent their ministers from the council were Norway and Ghana. Does that suggest the world is really not focusing on this conflict?
No. Listen, I think given the state of travel and COVID in this day and age, I can't speak for the member states, but and what their motivation was for the representation. It's just not that easy to get on a plane anymore. Like, 3 years ago, we may very well have seen more foreign ministers because it was easier to get here. So I'll leave that for member states. I think there is a concern, as the Secretary General said, as Mr. Vannislaan has said, that we're just heading in the wrong direction. And it is true that I think it is important that the international community not lose sight of the criticality of solving this ongoing conflict. As for Mr. Vannislaan's choice of words, I've nothing to add to what he said. Yes, Madame.
Follow up on James' questions. So if Mr. Wennesland doesn't want to condemn the Israeli settlements, do you condemn it? Does the Secretary General condemn it? And if not, why don't you condemn it? Thank you.
I think we have spoken very clearly on these issues. And again, Mr. Vannislaan spoke as special coordinator, and I have nothing to add to that. Okay. Maggie, please.
Steph.
And Abdelhamid.
Hi, Steph. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Okay, a couple of follow-ups on Ethiopia, please. When the Secretary General said in his statement, demonstrable effort to make peace, what was he particularly referring to about in the demonstrable?
Okay, and your other question?
My others are, can we expect a formal cessation of hostility announcement soon, or some sort of ceasefire announcement soon, since he sounds so optimistic?
As I told James, I don't want to give a
And
time.
I have a couple more,
Okay,
so keep going.
as I told James, I don't want to give a time frame given where we've been in this conflict before, but I feel the fact that there's been an increased dialogue and the ability of Mr. Obasanjo to speak both in Addis and Mekelle for us is a good sign. Did you have another question?
I do. Continuing on that, just on aid access, the last you briefed us on it last week, you were talking about the food and fuel going in, no deliveries, I believe, since mid-December on food into Tigray, no fuel since August. Would aid, and the Secretary General mentions aid access in his statement. So has he had any guarantees, any pledges from either side that supplies will go into Tigray?
I think at this point, the proof will be in the movement of the pudding, if you'll excuse my my analogy here. I mean, once the aid moves. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Fine, go ahead, Maggie.
I was just going to say, do you have? I was off for a while over the holidays, so perhaps you gave it and I missed it. But has there been any update on the detained UN staffers in Ethiopia? Is anybody still detained?
Yes,
Where is that at?
we are. We have, I think. Let me double check. But there's been one release 2 days ago. But I will give you. We have the latest number is 6 detained. Okay, Abdelhamid.
And then on the. Okay,
Oh, sorry. No,
thanks.
go ahead, Maggie. Go ahead. It's easier this way. Go ahead. Maggie, go ahead. If you have one more, go ahead.
Oops, you answered. Sorry, you answered it. You answered it.
Okay, great.
My brain wasn't moving.
That's
fast
okay.
with
That's
my
all right.
fingers.
Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. This morning at 3:30 a.m., the family of Salhi and Sheikh Jarrah lost the battle, which they went through for 5 years. Their home was demolished in front of their eyes. 18 people were arrested, and there was no mention of this crime, which happened this very morning. And Mr. Thor Winsland apparently didn't hear the voice or the sound of the demolition. And he didn't mention that.
Mr. Van Islan did talk about the Sheikh Jarrah issue. We have seen what our message has been clear for the Israelis to stop, to put an end to the demolitions and the evictions of Palestinian property, including in East Jerusalem, which we feel are in line with their obligations under international law.
My second question is about the Israeli speech in the Security Council, bringing Iraq to the Security Council. Would the Palestinians be accepted if they bring a bulldozer to the Security Council or a machine gun?
I'm not going to get into that. Permanent member states, observer states. It's not for me to speak to that. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
My last question. In his speech, Mr. Winsland did not mention the over 50 Palestinian corpses held by Israel. And he didn't mention the suffering of the prisoners and the children in detention and many others. And I followed all the crimes he mentioned and he went through it. He didn't mention some of the women were run over by settlers, as I said. Why is that?
Mr. Van Islan, I think, gave a fairly comprehensive roundup as he saw it. Go ahead.
Guantanamo Bay. The Center for Constitutional Rights said that the Biden administration is backing out of their campaign promise to close Guantanamo Bay and instead is using taxpayer dollars to give it a $4 million upgrade. Do you have any comments on that?
I mean, I would ask you to refer back to what I said, I think, last week, or 2 weeks ago, about Guantanamo Bay. I mean, the UN system has for many, many years expressed its very deep concern about Guantanamo Bay and the treatment of the detainees there. Celia, and then we have to go to Paulina because the Europeans are waiting to brief you.
Oh, thank you. Just a question. is any news about Venezuela paying their dues to regain their capability of voting? I know they're part of the 11.
No, nothing yet, but we'll check with our bean counter friends. Okay, Paulina?